What shall we do with our life this morning? What shall we do with our life this morning? What shall we do with our life this morning? Give it up in service. Friday. We know what happens on the Friday. You can read it for yourself in any of the Gospel accounts. Jesus is tried and then executed using a method devised by the Roman Empire to bring maximum pain and humiliation. As we come to the end of the hymn, we have a king who rides a donkey, used by kind permission of Stainer and Bell Limited, London. At first sight, there is no obvious Good Friday verse. The hymn starts with Palm Sunday and has clear references to the other events in Holy Week, and the chorus affirms the good news of the resurrection. But what about the cross? Now, I knew Fred, and I valued his company in ministers' meetings in the early days of coming back to Cumbria. Sometimes now I wish I had thought back then to ask him why he didn't include a verse explicitly about Jesus being taken to Calvary in this hymn. Some days I even begin to imagine what I might have been in that verse. Now I'm asking the question because the final verse, which I've just read, seems to be the Easter Day one. In affirming the resurrection, we make our response to what God has done in Jesus. But perhaps I have this wrong, after all. Perhaps our response begins as we gaze upon the cross. Isaac Watts' famous hymn, so often sung on Good Friday, ends like this. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. Not so far from what shall we do with our life this morning? Give it up in service. In the Gospel accounts, people of the day respond to Jesus on the cross, some more positively than others. The repentant thief, the centurion, and Joseph of Arimathea all make a step of faith, or at least a step towards faith, as they stand and watch the dying Jesus. So there is no doubt that we can and should be moved by Jesus' self-giving, no matter how precisely we understand its impact on our lives. But what turns a step towards faith, or the instinct to respond in some way into becoming a disciple and taking our place in sharing God's love with the world, is gazing on the cross and believing in resurrection. Now it is true that we must be careful to avoid skipping today, for there can be no Easter without Good Friday, no resurrection without the cross. And we should and must reflect on the enormity of Jesus' self-giving for you and for me and for the life of the world. But it is also important to remember that we should not get stuck here. At the moment, many car parks are closed to discourage people from putting themselves in a situation where they are too close to others. This reminds me of something a friend once said in a Good Friday sermon. He had been a professional driver in an earlier part of his life and was well acquainted with people telling him where he could and couldn't park. So in homage to all the slightly officious people who had moved him on, he used the phrase, "You can't park here," at several points through the address. Rest here, reflect here, but not indefinitely. So in all your listening and reading and praying about the final hours of the earthly life of Jesus of Nazareth today, remember quietly that death is not the final word, that it is what comes next that enables you and me, as forgiven sinners, to play our part in God's purposes for the world. What we will shout on Sunday, we whisper today. Jesus, the King is risen. Jesus, the King is risen. Jesus, the King is risen early in the morning.